Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to talk to you about being prepared for the second quarter and making sure specifically that you do great work on your Delta Math assessments. The first one is due December 2nd, and we'll be working on it starting tonight on through till that date. Please remember that I did offer you the opportunity to replace whatever you got in the first quarter with what you're able to earn in the second quarter. So this is a big deal to be able to do well on our Delta assignments. They count for up to 50% of your quarter grade. Some important dates and checkpoints for this first assignment include tonight, where you should complete 10% of the assignment. That may be extended for some of you if you do not get this presentation today, and I could accept that tomorrow night depending upon where you're at. 25% will be due this Sunday, the 14th, by midnight. It'll count as quiz grade, and I'll grade up to 40% of your work. So if you're to complete 40%, I would give you 40 out of 25, which would give you 160% on a quiz. 50% will be due by next Thursday at midnight. It'll be a homework out of 55 points, so it'll count significantly more than tonight's work. You'll then have to complete 80% by Sunday, once again at midnight, and that will count as 2 quiz grades. If you go on ahead and finish the assignment, I'll grade up to 100 out of 80%, and you'll earn 125% for those 2 quiz grades. And finally, the entire assignment will be due that following Wednesday. It will count as an exam grade, and you will earn credit based on your completeness, organization, and neatness. You can either earn additional credit or lose credit for those 3 components being at or above expectations, or perhaps not done very well at all. Also, remember that you can earn additional credit 1/2 point per skill if you do an additional question in each of the skills. So if you choose to do one more, when Delta says you completed the skill and you go 4 out of 3 or 5 out of 4 or so forth, you will earn an additional 1/2 point for each of those skills. Please recall the rubric as you're working. There's some really important facts here that I've suggested to you in the past that I want to make sure you're aware of. You can check your answers to many of the questions we do before you put your response into Delta, so you can avoid getting the red X and having credit taken off and having to redo additional questions. So that'll save you a lot of time. Please make sure that you are performing any checks as we go over in class and review in any of the sample work. Remember, Delta is typically not wrong. Very infrequently does that happen, so please don't input your same wrong answer twice. Look to see where you made a misstep. Investigate several model problems and read the steps carefully to understand what you're supposed to be doing. Go back to the model problems often if you need to. Delta will often give you a clue about what you did incorrect, so please read the boxes that come up and give you instructions as to what you could have done differently. It may say that your graph is incorrect, or it may say that you inputted the information improperly, or it may say you have to simplify your work, make sure it's the simplest form. But whatever it tells you, chances are it'll be helpful when you try on your second attempt to get the question correct. Be precise. Delta's pretty particular about how it wants you to input your answer, so this kind of relates to number 4. They work together. There may be a certain method or presentation that Delta's looking for, whether it's function notation or it's looking for a particular variable agreement that you may have missed that you want to make sure that you catch and don't create a misstep the second time. Delta's approach is not always the most efficient based on your preferences and the way we teach things in class. So if you're watching a video or you are investigating any of the example questions and it looks a little foreign to you, or you don't prefer the way that it's being done, use what you know best or what we learned in class. Anything taught properly and processed properly throughout all of mathematics should work correctly if you're using it in the right space. Come for extra help early in the assignment. Don't wait to the last minute when you feel completely overwhelmed. You're better off working ahead. You'll get a lot more credit for it anyway. Remember that throughout the assignment, your completeness is going to matter a lot. If it's excellently done and you're showing all steps and going above and beyond, you can earn an additional 2% on the assignment. If you have no supporting work, you could lose up to 15% for not having shown what's necessary so that I know that you're learning appropriately. Same thing is true of neatness. If you're exceptionally neat, you can earn an additional 2%. If it's too hard for me to grade or review, you can lose up to 15%. And your organization counts as well in the same manner, up to an additional 2% and a loss of up to 15% if it's not done. So even if Delta shows that you've completed 100% of the assignment and you've somehow done that through means that are inappropriate or not at the best of your ability, it's possible you could earn a score as low as a 55 or even less, up to my discretion. At the bottom, recall that you can earn an additional 1/2 point for each additional question you do per skill, only 1 per skill. And if there are, say, 20 skills in the assignment, that would equate for an additional 10%, and that would raise your score above and beyond possibly what you could have gotten. This is what the second quarter Delta assessment number 1 looks like. So here are the skills that we're going to be working on. There are technically 21, and they account for about 5% each of the assignments. So every time you complete a skill, you should earn 5%. Careful with the nth term in the arithmetic sequence. There's some details there that we'll go over in class to make sure that you don't get hung up on the very first skill. Solving linear equations with decimals, just make sure you use your calculator to perform those computations. That way you don't get hung up on actually doing the calculations. That's what your mini computer that sits in your hand is for. Similarly with linear equations with fractions level 3, make sure that you're going through the appropriate process. The video is not mandatory, ladies and gentlemen. That is going over what it means to be a function. You should have done that already in Edpuzzle, but if you're going to try to do the next two skills and you don't know what it means to be a function, you're really going to struggle, and they should be really easy. They shouldn't take more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes apiece. So please make sure that you have the awareness before you go on to skills 3 and 4, where you're trying to determine if a relationship is a function. Remember, a function means a useful equation that makes predictions into the future one at a time. The x values must be unique. They may not repeat. And given that information, that should be plenty to help you succeed through those two skills. Skills 5 and 6 are related. You'll be doing some solving systems of equation using substitution. You notice that you only have to do 2 in each of them because technically it's the same skill that you're practicing, so you'll be doing 4 in total, and that's fine. And the same thing is true with solving through elimination. Solving through elimination, I'm only asking you to do 2 in each of those skills because you'll be doing a total of 6 of that skill by the time you're done. We'll then go on to solving linear systems graphically at 2 different levels, and that will simply mean that you'll be graphing 2 linear relationships at the same time and looking for the point of intersection, and we'll finish the rest of the skills as we work through the unit. Please remember, delta tells me everything. Some of you guys are not really understanding that so well, but I have a lot of information about what you're doing, so you can see in suggestion number 1 that I'm going to have to limit the attempts because some of you are doing what I would call unacceptable work. You're just clicking through the questions and giving up and hoping that you see that same question again. So because of the students that have chosen to do it that way, you will only have a certain amount of attempts for the questions as we move forward. Please make sure that you're doing the work properly. That's not really learning. I'm not really sure how to define that or describe that. I know if and when you're working, so please don't try and suggest to me that you were working really hard on Delta and I go through and it shows me that you aren't doing much work, or specifically I can see that you haven't been on for days. So here are some of the students that were working last night on Delta. Some of you, when I scroll through, it'll suggest that you haven't been on Delta since October, which means you really haven't been doing what you're supposed to. I know when you're using an app, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you're doing your work appropriately. The consequences for using an app will be severe. If you're spending your time trying to figure out a way to get around the assignment rather than learn, I'm going to reset the entire assignment. I'm going to start it at 0. You won't get credit for any of that. And I'll talk more about how I know when that's the case and why that will be such a severe approach as I move forward. This particular student, it shows that they did this question in 36 seconds. That is it's virtually impossible. The question should take a minimum, I would think, maybe 2.5 to 5 minutes. So this is clearly done through an application, and they will get no credit, and the assignment will be reset. I have a strong idea of who's doing assignments and ways to assess and determine that. So Delta gives me some options to see where the work's coming from, and if it's not coming from your device, that would suggest somebody else is doing it. There are other mechanisms I have for determining that. If you're not doing your work, the assignment will be reset and you'll start at 0. Delta shows if you're trying to help yourself or relearn or just get a better understanding of a skill or concept, and if you're doing your part. So you'll notice that in one of the last assignments, if I check out the videos played for students who are trying to make sure that they understood the concept appropriately, I have students that watch as many as 13 assignments, some 8, some 4 and 5, and then there are students who didn't watch any. So if I recognize that you're someone who's struggling to get the assignment done, but you're not doing anything to help yourself succeed, it's going to be really difficult for me to want to go above and beyond to help you as well. Delta shows me much more. My job technically isn't to be a detective, or not even at all. So you have to make sure that your work is unique and authentic. That's on you. This is an institution of learning, and the burden of proof that you learned is on you. You have to show that you completed the assignment appropriately and that you understand the skills you were working on. If it comes down to it and I have to test you to see if the work that you're claiming you've done, you did, we will have that opportunity. And if it gets to the point where it gets a little contentious, we can bring other people in, administrators, to determine if it seems as though you're actually doing your work, which is not the way I want to go. So the easiest thing to do is just to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, when and where you're supposed to do it. If you do an exceptional job this year, ladies and gentlemen, I truly believe that we're going to make it through these crazy times we're in, and I think that we should celebrate exceptionally. So keep in mind that if we're able to, I say we set something up for the end of the year and try and do something special together, because you are currently doing what no students in the history of the world have ever done, and I think that's amazing, and I'm super proud, especially of those of you who are giving it your best. Tips for being successful: number 1, hit the checkpoints. If you don't fall behind the assignment, actually if you work ahead, you'll be positively affected tremendously, both your learning and your grade, because there's so much extra credit for working ahead. So make sure you don't fall behind, but that at minimum you hit the checkpoints. Have a plan. Failing to plan is planning to fail. If you're not really sure how or where or when you're going to get your work done, chances are your work's not going to get done. So not only should you have a plan, but you should have a backup plan and a backup to your backup plan. Where are you going to get your work done? When are you going to get your work done? What is your second option? What is your third option if those opportunities don't work out? Get help early in the assignment. Virtual extra help is happening on Tuesdays from 3 to 3:45 and Thursdays 7:15 to 8 o'clock. A bunch of students have already made it and done a fantastic job. If you need a hand, please reach out to classmates that might need help if you're someone who's being super successful. If you're someone who's struggling, try and stay in touch with your classmates and see if you can get some help from them as well. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to go into our Google Classroom, you would notice that tonight, Thursday night, 10% of Delta Quarter 2 Assignment 1 is due. And over the weekend, by Sunday at midnight, you'll have to complete 25% of the assignment. What I added to this assignment, and it needs a lot of work, but at least we're getting to the appropriate spot, or I'm giving you guys more resources, is an example of what the assignment should look like. It's not entirely complete. I haven't finished all the skills, and it does need some improvement. You'll notice that it begins with determining the nth term of an arithmetic sequence, which essentially means writing a repeated addition pattern in sequence form, and specifically being able to write it from time 1, because when we see a number pattern without any time associated with it, we have to assume that the first amount we see is a position 1. So it's going to require that you adjust the formula appropriately, and then you substitute in the term or the position that you're looking for to evaluate it correctly. You can check that on your calculator by going to your function list and substituting what you believe the equation to be and making sure that your work matches the number pattern that you were given to work with. As you work on down, you'll see a bunch more of skills that I've worked through for you. Again, there's a lot that I could do to improve this, and it's going to take a little bit of time for me to sort that out. But for now, you'll notice that I do make some mistakes in my work. When I go to check it, sometimes I have to go back and do the work over again. That page is a little cramped. I apologize for that. I can improve that. Skill number 2, the second question shows a little bit more closely what your work should probably look like. I've got organizational steps with distribution arrows. I'm showing how I'm collecting my like terms, where I'm clearing a denominator through the multiplicative property of equality, solving a 2-step, and then I'm also showing my substitution to make sure that the question works before I put the answer into Delta. That way I'm absolutely certain that my work is correct, or if, like in the previous page, I'll have to go back and redo the work. Also, you can fit a lot more skills on a page than some of you all have been doing. So if you notice, on the third page of my work, I'm able to get 2 skills in skills 3 and skill 4 because there's not a lot of work required. I don't want you to show nothing, but I don't want you to get crazy with it as well. We're trying to determine if the relationship's a function, and in skill number 3, you just have to make sure the x values are unique, that there's not more than one prediction at a time. If there is more than one prediction, or the x value shows up twice in 2 coordinate pairs, that means that we have a relationship that's not a function. It's not useful to us. In skill 4, where I'm determining that same concept graphically, I need to make sure that the relationship passes the vertical line test. I need to make sure that if I were to slice the graph at any particular point in time with a vertical line, there'd only be one point of intersection, meaning one prediction at a time, as stated a moment ago. And again, that's a good opportunity for you all to see that I'm able to fill as much as 3 skills into a page. Some of your previous work, some of you are doing a question a page, and this is taking an insane amount of notebook space to get through a Delta assignment. So you can consolidate that a little bit, though as I suggested, my first page is a little bit more than you might want to see. So I will go through the rest of this, and I'll try and make sure that I highlight some of the details and that I do a better job spacing it out so you can see it a little more completely. But hopefully that resource will help you feel a lot more comfortable in being able to complete the assignment. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a lesson on how to work through Delta problem sets as effectively and efficiently as possible. They can have a tremendous effect on both your grade and your learning. I hope that it's super helpful, and I'll see you in class. Take care.